Welcome back to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. I'm Brian.
And I'm Emily. We are so glad you're here with us today. Brian, I feel like we need to start with a question that might just blow our listeners' minds. Are you ready?
I am always ready, Emily. Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, here it goes. What if your morning coffee, your favorite t-shirt, and even the lights in your living room are all connected to something bigger than you think? What if they all leave a kind of invisible trail on our planet?
Whoa, that's a deep thought, Emily. An invisible trail? You mean like a ghost following me around? Or like a detective looking for clues?
Well, kind of like a detective, but a very, very big detective. Imagine your sandwich. Yes, your delicious sandwich. What if your sandwich, your shampoo, and even your Spotify playlist are all part of your carbon footprint?
My Spotify playlist? Now you've really got me intrigued, Emily. I mean, I listen to a lot of music, but I never thought of it as leaving a footprint. When I hear footprint, I think of actual feet in the sand. But this sounds different, much bigger, much more mysterious.
Exactly. It's like an invisible mark we leave on the earth with everything we do, everything we use, everything we consume. And today, we're going to explore this mystery together. We'll uncover what a carbon footprint really is, why it matters, and how it connects to our lives in surprising ways. And here's another mind-blowing question to get us started, something that ties directly into why you're listening to us right now. Could saving the planet actually help you speak better English? That's a fantastic question, Brian. And the answer, surprisingly, is yes. Absolutely yes. Learning about important global issues like our carbon footprint isn't just good for the Earth. It's incredibly good for your English. It gives you new words, new phrases, new ways to talk about the world around you.
Think about it. When you understand concepts like sustainability or biodegradable, don't worry, we'll explain these words clearly. You gain the vocabulary to discuss important topics. You can have conversations about the environment, about your choices, about the future. These aren't just science words. They are everyday words that are becoming more and more common.
And that's what we want for you, our amazing listeners. We want you to feel confident and comfortable discussing these big ideas in English. We want you to feel empowered. So throughout this episode, Brian and I are going to take complex ideas and break them down into simple, easy to understand language. We'll give you real-life examples, maybe even a funny story or two, so these words and concepts really stick in your mind.
We'll make sure to repeat new vocabulary in different ways using various sentences so you hear them, you understand them, and you can start using them yourself. Because that's the key to learning, isn't it? Practice and exposure, and understanding the context.
It's not just about memorizing words, it's about seeing how they live in the real world. For example, why is my sandwich part of my carbon footprint? Well, think about where the bread came from, where the vegetables were grown, how the meat was produced, how it all traveled to your local shop. All those steps, all that process, creates an impact, and that impact is part of its carbon footprint.
It's like a chain of events, right? From the farm, to the factory, to your plate. Every step requires energy, and that energy often comes from sources that create carbon emissions. We'll dive much deeper into this, explaining what those emissions are and why they matter.
So today is about more than just the environment. It's about building your English skills while exploring a topic that truly affects all of us. You'll learn words that are not just useful, but necessary for understanding our modern world. And we'll show you how to use these words in a natural, confident way.
And here's something really exciting, a little secret we're sharing up front to keep you engaged. Stick around, because near the end of today's episode, we will reveal one super simple thing you can do today that shrinks your carbon footprint and instantly gives you 5 new English words.
Yes, you heard that right. One simple action, a greener habit, and boom. 5 new words for your English vocabulary. It's like magic, but it's actually just smart learning and smart living.
So get ready to open your minds and your ears. We're going to journey from your sandwich to global warming, and everything in between. We'll laugh, we'll learn, and we might even inspire you to make a tiny change that has a big impact, both on the planet and on your English fluency.
So, if you've ever wondered how your daily habits fit into the bigger picture, or if you're looking for an exciting way to boost your English vocabulary and conversational skills, you are in the right place. Let's unravel the mystery of the carbon footprint, one step and one word at a time. Are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready, Emily. Let's jump in.
So, Brian, in our last segment, we touched on the idea of a carbon footprint, this invisible trail we leave. Let's really unpack that now. What exactly are we talking about when we say carbon footprint?
Good question, Emily. When we talk about a carbon footprint, we're essentially talking about the total amount of greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide, that are released into the atmosphere because of human activities. Think of it as the sum of all emissions of CO2 caused by your daily life, or even an organization or a product.
So every time we turn on a light, drive a car, or even buy a new shirt, we're contributing to this total?
Exactly. Every single action. The electricity that powers your home usually comes from power plants that burn fossil fuels like coal or natural gas, releasing carbon dioxide. Your car burns gasoline, which also releases CO2. Even the food you eat has a carbon footprint, from how it's grown to how it's transported to how it's cooked.
It's like everything has a story, and part of that story is how much carbon it used or created. So my sandwich isn't just bread and cheese. It's also a tiny bit of carbon released for every ingredient and every step it took to get to me. That's why we call it a footprint, because it's the mark, the impact your actions have on the environment.
And it's not just personal actions, right? Companies, cities, entire countries have carbon footprints too. It's a way to measure our environmental impact in terms of greenhouse gases. These gases, by the way, trap heat in the atmosphere, leading to what scientists call climate change or global warming.
That's a really clear explanation, Brian, and it brings us to an interesting point. If it's such a straightforward concept, why do people disagree so much about climate change or the importance of our carbon footprint? You hear a lot of different opinions out there, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, Emily. It's a hot topic, pun intended. Some people hear about climate change and carbon footprints and they think, this is serious. We need to act now. They might look at the scientific data, the melting ice caps, the changing weather patterns, and see an urgent need for big changes.
And then there are others who might say, oh, this is all just a lot of mumbo-jumbo. And for our listeners, when we say mumbo-jumbo, we mean confusing or meaningless talk. It's often used when someone thinks something is nonsense or overly complicated and not worth paying attention to. It's a dismissive term.
Yes, exactly. They might say, it's just natural cycles, or humans aren't that powerful, or the economy is more important. They might feel like the changes being asked are too big, too expensive, or that the science isn't completely settled in their minds. They might feel it's just a lot of complex, confusing talk that doesn't really apply to them.
And why do you think that mumbo-jumbo perspective exists, Brian? Is it just skepticism or something else?
I think it's a mix of things. For one, the topic itself can be very complex. Climate science involves a lot of different fields: physics, chemistry, biology. It's not always easy to understand. And for busy people, if something sounds too complicated or requires too much change, it's easier to just dismiss it as mumbo-jumbo and move on. That's true. It can feel overwhelming. Plus, the solutions often involve big changes to industries, to how we produce energy, and even to our daily lives. And change, as we all know, can be uncomfortable. It's easier to stick with what's familiar, even if it's not ideal. Definitely. And sometimes, the solutions proposed might seem like they're coming from a very distant place, like, oh, that's for scientists in fancy labs, not for me in my small town, or That's something only big governments can fix, not ordinary people. It makes it feel disconnected.
Right, but what we're trying to do here is connect it back to everyone's daily life. It's about understanding that your actions, no matter how small, contribute. And that brings us to thinking about those everyday habits. We all have funny or quirky ways we interact with the environment, sometimes without even realizing it.
My neighbor, for example, is obsessed with turning off every single light in his house, even during the day if there's enough natural light. He'll walk into a room, turn on a light, realize it's bright enough, and then immediately turn it back off. It's a bit quirky, but he's very focused on reducing his energy use. It's his personal quest for sustainability.
That's a great example of a habit aimed at sustainability. And sustainability is a really important word for today. When we talk about sustainability, we mean using resources in a way that meets our current needs without harming the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's about balance, about protecting things for the long term.
So my neighbor's light switching habit is about sustaining energy resources, making sure we don't use them all up too quickly. It's about thinking long term, like reusing your shopping bags instead of getting new plastic ones every time. That's a sustainable habit.
Exactly. Or choosing products that are biodegradable. Now, there's another great word for you, biodegradable. When something is biodegradable, it means it can be broken down naturally by bacteria or other living organisms. Think about a banana peel. If you throw it in your garden, it will eventually disappear, right? It becomes part of the soil. That's because it's biodegradable.
So a plastic bottle, on the other hand, is generally not biodegradable. It just sits there in a landfill for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It doesn't break down naturally. That's why we see so much plastic pollution.
Precisely. So when you choose a biodegradable soap or a coffee cup made from plant-based materials, you're making a sustainable choice, a choice that has less long-term negative impact on the environment. It's thinking about what happens after you're done with something. Does it disappear naturally, or does it stick around forever?
And sometimes, these sustainable choices might seem small, but they add up. My friend, for instance, insists on walking everywhere if it's less than 30 minutes away. Rain or shine, he's walking. He calls it his daily eco-stroll. It's his way of reducing his car's carbon footprint.
That's a perfect example of a small but impactful, sustainable habit. It also makes me think about what's feasible for people. Now, feasible means something is possible to do easily or conveniently. Like Brian, when you said your friend walks everywhere, that's feasible for him because maybe he lives close to his work or shops.
Right. For him, walking is feasible. But for someone who lives 20 miles from their job, in what some people might call the boonies, that's a fun, informal word, by the way, for a remote rural area far from towns and cities, walking or biking might not be feasible at all.
That's a great way to use boonies, Brian. So, if you live out in the countryside, in the boonies, where there are no sidewalks and everything is far away, taking public transport might not be feasible either. You probably need a car. But if you live in a city where there are buses, trains, and bike lanes, then riding a bike or taking public transport is much more feasible.
So when I said that was feasible, I meant it's actually possible. Like using a bike instead of driving everywhere in a city. Or, for someone in the boonies, maybe their feasible option for a smaller carbon footprint is to start a home garden to grow their own food, reducing the transport emissions of their groceries.
Exactly. What's feasible for one person might not be for another, depending on their location, their lifestyle, their budget. But the idea is to find what is feasible for you. It's not about perfection. It's about progress.
And this idea of feasibility also applies to bigger changes. For example, installing solar panels on your roof. For some homes, it's very feasible because they get a lot of sun, and perhaps there are government incentives. For others, maybe their roof is too small, or they live in a very shaded area, making it less feasible.
So, feasible is about practicality and possibility. Now let's talk about another important concept, preserve. To preserve means to keep something in its original or existing state. It's about protecting it from harm or decay. We want to preserve our planet, our natural environment.
We want to preserve the rainforests, preserve clean water, preserve the variety of animals and plants, what we call biodiversity. It's about protecting our natural resources. And a resource is a supply of something that someone has and can use when it is needed.
Yes, think of water as a resource. We use it for drinking, for cleaning, for agriculture. It's a natural resource. Forests are also natural resources, providing wood, oxygen, and homes for animals. When we talk about preserving resources, we're talking about using them wisely and protecting them so they don't disappear.
So sustainable actions help us to preserve our resources. Like turning off the water while you brush your teeth helps preserve water. Or recycling paper helps preserve trees, which are a resource. It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is. And sometimes preserving resources means making a drastic change. Now, drastic means extreme or severe. If your carbon footprint is very high, you might need to make drastic changes to reduce it. For example, selling your big gas-guzzling car and buying a small electric one would be a drastic change for many people.
Or completely changing your diet from eating a lot of meat to becoming vegetarian or vegan. For some, that would be a pretty drastic change, wouldn't it? It requires a lot of effort and commitment. It's a big shift in lifestyle.
Yes, a very drastic change. But sometimes, drastic actions are exactly what's needed to preserve our planet's resources. And sometimes, these drastic changes involve refitting something. To refit means to put new parts into something or to make changes to it so that it can be used for a different purpose or in a different way.
Oh, I like that. So, refitting your house for energy efficiency would mean adding new insulation, maybe new windows, or changing your heating system to something more sustainable, like solar power. You're not building a new house. You're refitting an old one to be greener.
Exactly. You're making it more sustainable, maybe even drastically reducing its energy consumption by refitting it. For example, if you live in an old apartment building and you convince the building owner to refit it with energy-efficient windows, that would be a fantastic step towards a lower collective carbon footprint.
It also happens a lot with older factories, where they need to refit their machinery to produce less pollution or to use less energy. They're adapting what they have, rather than replacing everything. It's a form of sustainability too, because you're reusing the core structure.
So, we've covered a lot of ground today already, Brian. We've gone from what a carbon footprint is, that invisible trail, to why some people think it's mumbo jumbo. We've explored how our daily habits contribute to sustainability and what it means for something to be biodegradable. And we've discussed what makes something feasible in different environments, whether you're in the city or out in the boonies.
And we've touched on the importance of preserving our resources, even if it sometimes requires drastic changes or refitting old things to make them new again, or at least greener.
Absolutely. The key takeaway from this section is that while the concept of a carbon footprint might seem big and overwhelming, it's made up of countless small actions, both individual and collective. And understanding these terms, like feasible, sustainable, biodegradable, gives you the language to talk about these choices.
Because when you can talk about it, you can understand it better, and you can start to think about what changes you can make. It's not just abstract science. It's about your everyday life.
And speaking of everyday life, we're going to take these words and concepts and bring them to life even more in our next section, with some fun mini dramas and role plays. You'll hear these words used in very practical, relatable situations.
Get ready to hear a roommate going green and maybe even annoying the other one, or a tourist asking about solar panels abroad. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it will help you cement these words even deeper into your English vocabulary.
So stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break to dive into some green dramas and see these words in action.
Welcome back, everyone. In our last segment, we talked a lot about words like feasible, drastic, and refit. Now it's time to see them in action. We thought it would be super fun to do some short mini-dramas or role plays to show you how these words can be used in everyday conversations.
That's right, Brian. We want you to really hear these words in context so they stick in your mind. First up, we have a common modern dilemma. Roommates trying to live together, but one is going a little extra with their green habits.
Oh, this is going to be good. I'll be Mark, the super eco-conscious roommate, and Emily, you can be Sarah, the one who just wants to live her life.
All right, let's do this. Here's our scene. Sarah walks into the living room and finds Mark separating every tiny piece of trash.
Sarah, perfect timing. Could you please tell me which bin this bread tie goes in? Is it metal or mixed plastics number 7? It's crucial for our weekly recycling quota. We are aiming for 0 waste this month.
Mark, seriously? It's a tiny bread tie. Just put it in the regular trash. We've already got 5 different recycling bins in the kitchen, and now you're sorting bread ties? This is a bit much.
But Sarah, this is a drastic situation. Every little piece counts towards our carbon footprint. We need to be more committed to meeting sustainability. Think of the turtles.
I appreciate your passion for sustainability, Mark, I really do. But trying to achieve 0 waste in our apartment, it just doesn't feel feasible for 2 busy people. It's a drastic change from how we used to live. And honestly, it's making our kitchen look like a recycling plant. Can we find a more feasible approach?
A more feasible approach? Sarah, this is the feasible approach. It's about making small, consistent efforts. Like, have you been turning off the lights every time you leave a room, even for a second?
Okay, I think I need a moment, and maybe a non-biodegradable snack.
And scene. Wow, Emily, you really captured the exasperated roommate.
And you, Brian, were the perfectly annoying but well-meaning eco-warrior. So let's break down some of those words we just heard. Brian, you said, this is a drastic situation.
Yes. And you, Emily, as Sarah said, it's a drastic change from how we used to live. Remember, drastic means extreme or severe. Mark thought his recycling efforts were a necessary and normal response, but Sarah saw them as a huge, intense, or even over-the-top change to their lives.
Right. It implies a big, noticeable shift. Then we used sustainability. Mark said, we need to be more committed to our sustainability. So, and I, as Sarah, echoed that, I appreciate your passion for sustainability. We talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. Sustainability means using resources wisely so that future generations can also meet their needs. Mark believed his actions were all about long-term care for the planet.
And the big one in that scene was feasible. Sarah said, it just doesn't feel feasible, size 8, for 2 busy people. And then I, as Mark argued, this is the feasible tie approach.
Yes, and again, feasible means possible to do easily or conveniently. Sarah felt Mark's zero-waste plan wasn't practical or easy for them to achieve. Mark, of course, thought it was totally possible. What's feasible really depends on the situation and the people involved. It's all about what's practical for you.
Exactly. A drastic change might not always feel feasible to everyone, even if it contributes to sustainability. Great examples from our first drama. Now for our next scenario, let's transport ourselves abroad. Imagine a tourist who's very curious about local green initiatives.
I love this. I'll be Maria, a local shop owner, and Brian, you can be Alex, the curious tourist.
All right, here's the scene. Alex, the tourist, is admiring the beautiful solar panels on the roof of a small shop in a sunny Mediterranean town.
Excuse me, Maria? I couldn't help but notice your amazing solar panels. Did you recently refit your shop with those? They look very modern.
Oh, hello. Yes, we did. We decided to refit the whole building last year. The old roof needed repairs anyway, so we thought, why not go completely green? It was a big project, but worth it.
That's fantastic. I've been traveling quite a bit, and I'm always interested in how different places are embracing sustainability. Was it a big decision to refit the shop like that? I mean, installing solar panels must be quite an investment.
It certainly was an investment, yes, but we believe it's important to preserve our environment and use our natural resources wisely. Plus, the sun here is a wonderful resource. You know what? So using it for power just feels right. It was a drastic hot change for the building, but it makes us feel good about our impact.
I completely agree. It's inspiring to see. And it looks like a lot of homes around here have solar panels too. It must be very feasible for people in this region to switch to solar power.
Yes, absolutely. With so much sunshine, it makes sense. And there are government programs that make it more feasible for homeowners to refit in their houses too. It's all part of trying to make our town more sustainable for the future.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing.
And scene, another great role play, Brian. Maria there was a truly passionate shop owner.
And Alex was a very polite and curious tourist. Let's talk about refit. Maria said, "We decided to refit the whole building last year." And later, government programs that make it more feasible for homeowners to refit their houses.
Yes, to refit means to put new parts into something or to make changes to it so it can be used for a different purpose or in a different way. In this case, they weren't building a new shop, but they were changing the existing one to be more energy efficient by adding solar panels. It's about upgrading something old to be better or greener.
It's very common when talking about old buildings, or even old ships or planes, when you give them new equipment or new interiors for a different purpose. Here, it's about making the building sustainable.
We also heard preserve and resource again. Maria said, "We believe it's important to preserve our environment and use our natural resources wisely. And then, the sun here is a wonderful resource.
Right. To preserve is to protect something, to keep it in its good condition, like preserving nature. And a resource is a supply of something that can be used. The sun, water, forests, these are all resources. Maria wanted to preserve the environment by using the sun as a resource for power.
And we circled back to drastic and feasible as well. Maria said it was a drastic change for the building, referring to the big project of installing solar panels, which is a significant, noticeable change. And she said it was feasible for people to do because of government programs and the abundant sunshine. So the possibility of doing it was high.
Perfect. These words are really starting to sink in, aren't they? For our third and final mini-drama, let's stay with the theme of home improvements, but this time it's all about energy savings.
Excellent. I'll be Clara, the homeowner who's a bit overwhelmed by the idea of renovating her old house. And Brian, you can be Leo, her friend who knows a lot about green construction.
I'm ready. Here's our scene. Clara and Leo are looking at plans for Clara's very old house.
Leo, I love this old house, but its energy bills are just insane. My heating costs are through the roof, literally. I know I need to do something drastic, but where do I even begin?
Clara, you don't need to rebuild the whole house. You can refit it for much better energy efficiency. See here? We can add modern insulation in the walls and attic and replace those old drafty windows with energy-efficient ones.
Refit it? So, not a complete teardown? That sounds much more feasible than starting from scratch. I thought I'd need a drastic renovation, which feels overwhelming.
Exactly. A lot of people think they need a drastic overhaul, but often a strategic refit is all it takes. It makes the house more sustainable and helps you preserve your hard-earned money by cutting those bills. Plus, you're helping to preserve the environment by reducing your energy consumption.
So, replacing the boiler with a high-efficiency one and adding better insulation, that would be considered a refit all? And It's a drastic improvement to the house's energy use, even if it's not a complete rebuild?
Precisely. It's a series of strategic dry refits that lead to a drastic positive change in energy use. And it's definitely the most feasible way to go green with an older home like this, without breaking the bank. You're making smart use of the existing structure, a true step towards meager sustainability.
That makes so much more sense. Thank you, Leo. I feel much more confident about making these changes.
And scene. Clara sounded much happier by the end, Emily.
Yes, thanks to Leo's excellent advice. So in that scene, we heard drastic and refit multiple times, really driving home their meaning. Clara initially felt she needed a drastic solution, a very severe, big renovation.
And Leo, the expert friend, explained that a strategic refit could achieve the same drastic positive impact on energy use. Remember, refit means updating an existing structure with new parts or changes to make it function better, especially for a new purpose, like energy efficiency.
Exactly. And we reinforced how a refit could be the more feasible option compared to a full rebuild, making it possible and practical for Clara. And of course, these actions all contribute to sustainability and help us preserve our resources and the environment.
This kind of strategic refitting is actually becoming quite popular, particularly with older buildings that have a lot of character, but were built before energy efficiency was a major concern.
It's about working with what you have, which is a very sustainable approach in itself. You're not just consuming new materials, you're improving existing ones.
We hope these mini-dramas have helped you hear these important words in action. In situations that feel real and relatable, hearing them used naturally in conversation is one of the best ways to learn new vocabulary.
Absolutely. Because now, when you hear drastic or refit or feasible, you won't just know the definition, you'll have a context. You might even remember Mark, Sarah, Alex, Maria, Clara, or Leo.
Exactly. And speaking of remembering, coming up next, we've got some fantastic tips and challenges to help you make these words and concepts stick even more firmly in your English vocabulary.
We'll have some tricks, maybe a quick quiz, and ways to make learning feel like a fun game. So don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone. We've just had some fun with our mini-dramas, hearing words like drastic, feasible, and refit in action. Now it's time to switch gears a bit. We want to give you some super practical tips and challenges to help you not just understand these words, but really own them.
That's right, Brian. Our goal isn't just for you to recognize these words, but to feel confident using them in your own conversations. We want them to become part of your active vocabulary, not just words you understand passively.
Here's a trick for you. Every time you hear a new word today, or any new word in English, imagine how you'd use it to describe your lifestyle. For example, if we're talking about drastic, maybe you think, changing my diet was a drastic decision for my health. Or, the weather here has seen some drastic changes this year.
Exactly. Or with feasible, you could think, is it feasible for me to learn 3 new English words every day? Or, starting a new business feels more feasible now than it did 5 years ago. Connecting new vocabulary to your personal experience makes it much easier to remember and recall later. It creates a stronger memory pathway in your brain.
Another great tip. Want to make learning stick? Try using today's vocabulary in a funny story. It doesn't have to be a true story. Maybe it's about your dog, or your dinner, or even a crazy dream you had last night. Humor really helps memory.
For example, imagine you have a very energetic dog. You could say, my dog, Buster, made a drastic attempt to catch a squirrel, which wasn't very feasible since the squirrel was already up the tree. Or, we had to refit our kitchen after Buster decided to chew on the cabinets. A drastic change, but surprisingly feasible. See? It's silly, but it works.
Those are perfect examples, Emily. The more ridiculous or personal the example, the better it sticks. Now, how about we play a quick game? We'll give you a scenario, and you tell us which word, drastic, feasible, refit, sustainability, preserve, or resource, fits best.
This is going to be fun. Let's call it word match. Brian, you give the scenario first.
Okay, scenario number 1. Imagine a company that has decided to only use materials that can be grown again naturally, like bamboo or recycled paper, instead of cutting down old-growth forests. They want to make sure they don't use up all the natural materials on Earth. Which word describes their goal?
Making sure there are enough natural materials for the future. That sounds like sustainability. They are focusing on sustainable practices. How about this one? Your old mobile phone is very slow and the battery dies quickly. Instead of buying a completely new phone, you decide to get a new battery and update the software. What did you do to your phone?
You didn't get a new one. You updated the old one. You refitted it. You put new parts into an existing thing to make it work better. That's a good example.
Your turn.
All right. Next scenario. Your friend wants to walk to the moon to get a special rock for their collection. You tell them, that's not something you can do. Which word would you use to describe walking to the moon?
Oh, that's clearly not feasible. It's not possible, definitely not practical, and certainly not easy. Good one, Brian.
Thanks. Here's another. Your city government decided that to reduce traffic, everyone must now travel by bicycle only. No cars allowed at all. This is a huge, very sudden change for everyone. What kind of change is this?
That's a drastic change. It's an extreme, severe, and very big shift from how things were. Imagine the chaos.
Exactly. Last one for this round. You visit a very old library and see signs saying, "Please do not touch the old books. We need to keep them safe for future generations." What are they trying to do with the old books?
They are trying to preserve them. They want to protect them and keep them in their original good condition. And actually, those old books are also a valuable resource for knowledge and history. So preserve and resource both fit there.
Excellent, Emily. You got them all. We hope you, our listeners, were playing along at home and got them right too. It's a great way to test your understanding.
And don't forget the idea of a resource. We talked about natural resources like the sun and forests, but a resource can also be knowledge, time, or even money. Like, time is a valuable resource when you're studying English.
That's a fantastic point, Emily. Expanding the definition helps listeners see how versatile these words are. For instance, think about the word biodegradable. We mentioned it briefly. If you're trying to choose between two kinds of trash bags, and one says biodegradable, what does that mean?
It means it will naturally break down and decompose or rot away back into the earth without harming the environment. It won't stay in the landfill for hundreds of years. So a biodegradable sandwich bag is a more sustainable choice than a regular plastic one.
Exactly. And if something isn't biodegradable, it means it will stick around for a very, very long time, like most plastics. That's why they become such a problem.
So, if you're ever in a store and you see a product labeled biodegradable, you know it's designed to be more environmentally friendly. It's a key word in the world of sustainability.
Let's take another moment to reinforce our tips. Remember to try and use these words in your own sentences this week. Don't just read them. Say them out loud. Write them down. The more you activate the words, the stronger they become in your mind.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn. If you're practicing with a language partner or a teacher, try to incorporate feasible or drastic into your conversation. Ask them, do you think it's feasible to completely stop using plastic bags? Or, have you made any drastic changes to your lifestyle recently?
Great idea, Emily. Real conversations are the best practice. And remember the mumbo jumbo from earlier? That was a fun one. It means confusing or meaningless talk. So if someone is talking about climate change in a way that's very confusing, using scientific terms you don't understand, you might think, wow, that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo.
Yes, and that's a very informal phrase. You wouldn't use it in a formal academic paper, but it's perfect for a casual conversation with a friend. It's about expressing frustration or confusion in a lighthearted way.
And how about boonies? Remember that one? If you live out in the boonies, it means you live in a very remote area, far away from cities or towns. It's like living in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, you wouldn't expect to find a huge shopping mall out in the boonies. It implies a place that's rural and undeveloped. So if someone says, "Oh, they live way out in the boonies," you immediately understand they're talking about a very quiet countryside location.
These words, whether they're about sustainability or just describing places and ideas, help you express yourself more completely and naturally. And that's our goal here, to give you the tools to speak English more confidently about topics that matter.
Absolutely. So remember our tips. Connect new words to your own life, create funny stories, and try to use them in real conversations. Every little bit of practice helps these words become truly yours.
Coming up next, we're going to wrap up with some powerful takeaways and actions you can start doing today, not just for your English, but for your carbon footprint too. It's going to be a rewarding end to our episode.
We'll recap the most important words and give you some practical steps that will connect your language learning to making a real impact. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back for our final segment, everyone. We've journeyed through carbon footprints, explored different viewpoints, laughed at some quirky habits, and even acted out a few mini-dramas. Now it's time to bring it all together and give you some concrete actions.
That's right, Brian. We promised you that this episode would not only teach you English, but also empower you to make a real difference. And we meant it. So let's recap 5 powerful practical things you can do today, starting right now, that will shrink your carbon footprint and, surprisingly, boost your English.
Action number 1. Start with your food. We talked about food being a big part of your carbon footprint, so try to eat more plant-based meals. Even 1 or 2 days a week makes a huge difference. Eating locally sourced produce also reduces the miles your food travels.
And while you're thinking about your food, practice using the word biodegradable. When you're at the store, look for packaging that says biodegradable. Ask yourself, is this packaging biodegradable? This helps you remember the word in a real-life context.
Action number 2. Rethink your transport. We gave the example of biking instead of driving. If it's feasible for you, try walking or cycling for short distances. If not, consider public transport. Every ride you don't take in a car is a step towards a smaller carbon footprint.
And when you're thinking about this, ask yourself, is it feasible for me to take the bus instead of driving today? Or, if someone suggests a long drive, you might think, is that really the most feasible option? Keep that word feasible active in your mind.
Action number 3, reduce your energy use at home. Remember our role play about refitting a house? You don't have to do a whole home refit, but small changes add up. Turn off lights when you leave a room, unplug chargers, and consider turning down your heating or air conditioning just a little bit.
And here, you can think about drastic and refit. You don't need to make a drastic change, but even small adjustments can make a difference. You could say, I'm going to refit my habits to save energy. It's a playful way to use the word.
Action number 4, be mindful of your consumption. Before you buy something new, ask yourself if you really need it. Can you repair something you already own? Can you buy secondhand? The less new stuff we buy, the fewer resources are used.
This links directly to resource and sustainability. Ask yourself, is buying this new item a sustainable choice? Or, am I using my resources wisely? Every time you make a conscious choice, you reinforce these words.
And finally, action number 5, talk about it. Share what you've learned today with friends and family. The more people who understand these concepts, the bigger impact we can have. And talking about it in English is fantastic practice.
Exactly. Use the words carbon footprint and sustainability in your conversations. Explain why something is feasible or why a change might be drastic. This is where your English truly begins to flourish, when you use it to discuss important topics.
So let's recap 5 core vocabulary words we want you to practice this week.
First, carbon footprint. Try saying, my goal is to reduce my carbon footprint by walking more.
Second, sustainability. Use it like this. Companies are focusing more on sustainability to protect the planet.
Third, feasible. Practice with, learning English every day is feasible if I manage my time well.
Fourth, drastic. Say, turning off all lights at night felt like a drastic change, but it saved energy.
And fifth, resource. Try this. Water is a precious resource that we must preserve.
Your words shape your thoughts. Your habits shape your world. Use better words. Live better. Start now. It's about empowering yourself, both with language and with action.
Remember that super simple thing we teased at the beginning of the episode? The one that shrinks your carbon footprint and instantly gives you 5 new English words? It's simply this. When you're done listening to this podcast, turn off your device. It uses energy. And then tell someone about one thing you learned today, using one of the new words. That simple act of communication, using your new vocabulary, is incredibly powerful.
That's fantastic, Emily. It's a full circle moment. We hope you feel smarter, more aware, and more fluent after today's episode. We believe that learning English can be a powerful tool for understanding and engaging with the world around you.
Absolutely. And this conversation about our planet is far from over. Next week's episode might challenge how you think about water and teach you what scarcity really means.
Oh, that sounds intriguing. We'll be diving deep into water issues, and I promise you, you'll learn some really useful English vocabulary that's essential for understanding global challenges.
So make sure you tune in. Thank you so much for joining us on Our Carbon Footprint, Talk Green, Speak Smart. We had a wonderful time with you.
Until next time, keep practicing your English and keep making those small, powerful changes. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye for now.